Most people think the scariest knocks on the door come late at night, but mine came on a Tuesday afternoon in broad daylight with 2 patrol cars parked in my driveway. It all started because of a garden, flag, and a woman who decided my quiet life was her new project. What I didn't know then was that she'd already made one call that would cost her everything. My name doesn't matter. But here's what does. I'm 62 years old, retired from 30 years working in municipal maintenance, and I've lived in this house for almost 15 years. I keep my head down, my grass short, and my bills paid. The kind of neighbor you'd barely notice unless you needed someone to water your plants while you were on vacation. I've always been fine with that. Quiet suits me. This neighborhood used to suit me too. It's one of those suburban HOA communities that looks nice on paper, park, clean sidewalks, decent people. For years, the HOA was invisible in the best way. You paid your dues, they took care of common areas, and nobody bothered you. Board was made up of retirees who met once a month, rubber-stamped a few things, and went back to their lives. It wasn't exciting, but it worked. Then came the election. I didn't pay attention at the time. A flyer showed up about new leadership and raising standards. I tossed it in the recycling. That was my first mistake. Because the woman who won didn't just want to lead the HOA, she wanted to own it. Her name was Linda. Within 2 months, everyone in the neighborhood knew it. Not because she introduced herself or threw a welcome barbecue. Because her name was suddenly on everything. Every email, every letter, every new rule that showed up in our mailboxes like clockwork. She was. In her late 40s, drove a luxury SUV with vanity plates, and had the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. The first time I saw her at a community meeting, she spent 20 minutes explaining why someone's mailbox was 3 inches too far forward, while the homeowner sat there, silent and humiliated. She didn't just enforce rules, she performed them. Didn't meet her face to face back then, but I felt her everywhere. The first letter arrived on a Thursday. Pulled it from the mailbox, along with junk mail and grocery flyers. The HOA logo was stamped at the top. Inside, it said, my front garden was not in compliance with community standards and needed to be removed or relocated within 14 days. Listed code numbers and bylaw references like a legal document. I stood there, staring at it. My garden, the one I'd planted 3 years ago. Small patch along the front walkway with flowers, a stone border, and a solar light. Nothing wild, nothing dead, just normal. I walked back and looked at it from the street. It looked fine, better than fine. It looked cared for. But apparently that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was, it wasn't on the approved list Linda had put together. I didn't even know there was an approved list. That letter bothered me, not just because of what it said, but because of how it felt. Cold, like someone had been watching my house, taking notes, waiting for something to complain about. Have you ever had that creeping feeling someone's keeping score on you, and you didn't even know the game started? I thought about fighting it, but I also thought, it's just a garden. Maybe if I adjust it, she'll move on, so I did. It's pulled up a few plants, moved the stone border back a foot. It's left it at that. 2 weeks later, the second letter came. This one was about the flag on my porch. A simple bracket-mounted flag next to my front door. Clean, respectful, nothing torn or faded. The letter said it was improperly displayed per HOA exterior guidelines. It suggested I remove it or relocate it to an approved position. That one stung worse. I'm a veteran. Not the type to make a big deal about it, but that flag meant something. It wasn't just decoration. And now someone was telling me it was a problem. I started to feel it then. A tight knot in your chest when you realize something's shifted, and it's not shifting back. This isn't about rules, I thought. This is about control. And someone's decided I'm the one who needs controlling. The third letter came less than a week later. My car, parked in my own driveway. Now in violation because it had been there for more than 48 consecutive hours without being moved. The letter included dates and times. Someone had been watching, writing it down, logging it. I sat at my kitchen table that night. All 3 letters spread out in front of me. and I felt something I'd never felt in my own home before. Fear not. The loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that makes you second guess, stepping outside to check your mail. The kind that whispers, "What's next?" Because if they're sending letters about flowers, flags, and parked cars, what happens when they decide to get serious? I tried to push back, called the HOA office, got voicemail, sent an email asking for clarification, got an automated reply. With a link to hundreds of pages of bylaws I'd never agreed to memorize, went to a meeting, tried to speak during open comments. Linda smiled, nodded, said my concerns were noted, then moved on without addressing a single thing. That's when I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intentional, and I wasn't the only one. Mary, 2 houses down, got cited for a garden gnome, a 4-inch ceramic gnome her grandkids gave her. Tom across the street got fined for parking his work truck overnight, something he'd done for 8 years without issue. An elderly couple at the end of the block got a violation notice because their white paint was off-white instead of pure white. A difference no human eye could see. We'd all lived here peacefully for years. Now suddenly, everything was a problem. The fines started next. $50 here, $75 there. If you didn't pay within 10 days, they doubled. The letters kept coming, faster now, like Linda had a quota. Every time I opened my mailbox, my stomach dropped. What now? What tiny, harmless thing had I done wrong this time? The worst part wasn't the money. It was losing the feeling that your home is really yours. You're living under someone else's thumb. No matter how much you follow the rules, they'll invent new ones to catch you with. I started keeping a folder. Every letter, every email, every notice. Logged the dates, the claims, the fines. I didn't know why yet, but something told me I'd need proof later. Proof I wasn't crazy. Proof this wasn't normal. Proof someone had decided to make my life hell for no reason except that they could. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd sit there and think, how far is she willing to take this? That question got answered faster than I expected. One afternoon, I got a certified letter. The kind that requires a signature. The kind that feels heavy before you even open it. Inside was a notice of escalated enforcement action. The language was different now. Sharper. Legal, it said. I continued. Non-compliance was creating a pattern of disregard for community welfare, and that further violations could result in a lien being placed on my property. A lien. On my home. The home I'd worked 30 years to afford. Over a garden and a flag, I read that line 3 times. Each time it felt less real and more terrifying. Have you ever held a piece of paper that made the ground fall out from under you? But there was something else in that envelope. A final line, almost casual, buried at the bottom. It said that if I had concerns, I could contact local authorities. To verify HOA enforcement practices, at the time I thought it was just legal boilerplate. A throwaway sentence. I had no idea Linda had already made that call herself, and I had no idea that when the police showed up at my door a few days later, everything was about to change. There's a difference between a warning and a weapon. A warning gives you a chance to fix something. A weapon is designed to hurt, and the person holding it knows exactly what they're doing. Linda had stopped sending warnings. The moment she started sending letters, every piece of paper in my mailbox wasn't meant to help me comply. It was meant to build a case. The fine started. At $50 for the garden? I paid it. Didn't want trouble. I thought that would be the end of it. But 2 days after I mailed the check, another letter came. $75 for the flag, then $100 for my car. Then another $50 for a trash can left visible 15 minutes too long. The amounts didn't matter. It was the pace. They were coming faster than I could breathe. I called the HOA office again. This time someone picked up. A woman's voice, flat. And board told me I needed to submit questions in writing. I said I already had. She said she'd check and get back to me. She never did. So I sent another email, kept it polite, respectful. I explained I'd lived here 15 years without issues, that I was willing to make changes, but I needed clearer guidance. I asked if we could talk in person at the next meeting. Work this out like adults. The response came 2 days later. Not from Linda, from some automated HOA management email. 3 sentences, cold, clipped, useless. It said my concerns had been reviewed. All actions were in accordance with policy, and I should refer to the attached bylaws for clarification. The attachment was the same 100-page PDF I'd already tried to dig through. No empathy, no conversation, just policy. I stared at that email and felt something harden inside me. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was about power. The message was clear. We don't owe you an explanation. Pay. Up or suffer. The fines kept piling up. $600 within a month. Then $800. I paid what I could, but they came faster than I could keep up. And every time I missed one, the next letter reminded me that unpaid fines could lead to collections. Liens. Legal action. That word lien started appearing more and more. A lien on my house. The house I'd worked 30 years to own. I wasn't the only one getting hit. Tom across the street told me he'd racked up $400 in 3 weeks. But it was Mary's story that really got to me. Mary was 74, lived 2 houses down. Her grandkids had given her a little ceramic garden gnome for her birthday, and she'd put it near her mailbox. 4 inches tall, painted bright colors. It's the kind of thing that makes you smile when you walk by. One morning, she found a violation notice taped to her door. The gnome was unapproved decorative clutter. She had 72 hours to remove it or face a $50 fine. Mary came to my door in tears, holding that notice and shaking hands. She asked me what she'd done wrong. I didn't have an answer. Because she hadn't done anything wrong, none of us had. But that didn't matter anymore. I helped her take the gnome inside. We stood there in her living room, this tiny ceramic thing sitting on her coffee table, and I thought, this is what it's come to. A 74-year-old woman is afraid of a garden gnome because someone decided she needed to be afraid. That's when I decided to push back harder. I sent another email, firmer this time. Didn't yell, didn't curse, just stated facts. I listed every fine I'd received, the dates, the reasons, and I pointed out that none of these things had been problems before Linda took over. I asked clearly and directly why I was being targeted. Her response came the next morning, and she'd copied 15 people. Neighbors, people I knew, people I'd waved to for years. The email was short and devastating. It said that some residents had expressed concerns about my pattern of noncompliance, that the board took community safety and property values very seriously, that I'd been given multiple opportunities to correct violations and had chosen not to cooperate. Then she listed every fine I'd received, dates, amounts, like a criminal. Record put on public display. I read it 3 times, my face burning hotter each time. She'd just told 15 people I was a problem, that I was the reason the neighborhood was in danger, that I was refusing to follow rules. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter. The damage was done. The waves stopped after that. Talk at the mailbox dried up. One woman I'd known for years crossed the street when she saw me coming. I don't think she meant to be cruel. She just didn't want to be associated with the problem resident. Fear makes people shrink away from each other. What do you do when the people who are supposed to protect the neighborhood decide you're the enemy? When fairness disappears and all that's left is a target on your back? I went to the next board meeting, signed up to speak, brought my folder of letters, emails, fines. When my name was called, I stood up and calmly explained what had been happening. I said I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I just wanted fairness. I wanted to understand why things that had been fine for years were suddenly violations. Linda sat at the front table, hands folded, face blank. She let me finish. Then she smiled, not a real smile. The kind of smile someone gives you right before they twist the knife. She tilted her head slightly like she was talking to a confused child and said, in this slow, patronizing voice, "Thank you for your input. The board will take your concerns under advisement." She held eye contact for just a second too long, enjoying it. Then she turned to her papers and moved on to the next agenda item. Pool maintenance. Like I'd never spoken at all. I stood there, folder in hand, feeling 15 pairs of eyes on my back. Few people glanced at me with that look. The one that says, "Oh, so you're the one." Linda had already poisoned the well. I wasn't a neighbor anymore. I was a nuisance. My home stopped feeling like mine. Every time I walked outside, I wondered who was watching, who was taking notes, who was going to report me next. I started changing my routines, taking trash out earlier or later to avoid the window, moving my car every day even if I wasn't going anywhere, checking and rechecking my porch, my driveway, looking for anything that could be used against me. I felt like I was living in a prison, and the warden had a clipboard. Late at night, I'd lie awake doing the math. How much could I afford? Long. Could I keep this up? What happened if I couldn't pay? And Darka, what if that's exactly what she wants? I dug deeper into the bylaws. The HOA president had massive power. Levy fines, reject appeals, escalate enforcement, authorize legal action. Almost no oversight. Linda had stacked the board with people who nodded along with whatever she said. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was weaponizing them. I wasn't a lawyer, wasn't rich, didn't have influence or connections. Just a 62-year-old retiree trying to live quietly in the house I'd earned. And I was losing. But I kept that folder. Every letter, every email, every receipt. Something told me people who abuse power eventually make a mistake. And when they do, you'd better have proof. I just didn't know how bad things would get before. That moment came. It was a Tuesday. Warm afternoon. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard it. A car door, then another. Heavy boots on pavement, then the knock, sharp, loud, official. My hand froze on the coffee pot. My stomach dropped. I walked to the front door and looked through the window. 2 police officers stood on my porch. Behind them, 2 patrol cars parked in my driveway. Lights off but engines running, and across the street, barely visible behind her curtains, I saw Linda. Arms crossed, face expressionless, watching. I've opened my door to a lot of things over the years. Neighbors borrowing tools, kids selling fundraiser candy, delivery drivers with packages. But I'd never opened it to 2 police officers standing on my porch, with their hands resting near their belts, eyes sharp, faces unreadable. My first thought wasn't about the HOA. It wasn't about Linda or fines or letters. My first thought was, someone's hurt. Maybe there was an accident on the street. Maybe someone broke into a house nearby. Maybe they're going door to door looking for witnesses. But then I saw the way they were looking at me. It's not like they needed help, like I was the reason they were there. "You the homeowner?" the taller officer asked. His voice was flat, direct, no warmth in it. I nodded. "Is everything all right?" The second officer, younger, with a notebook already in his hand, glanced past me into the house. Not a casual look, a cop look, searching. "We got a call from your homeowners association," the first officer said. "Need to talk to you about some complaints?" I blinked. Complaints? What kind of complaints? "Mind if we come in?" That's when the fear hit. Not the slow creeping kind I'd felt reading Linda's letters. This was instant, sharp, like ice water down your spine. Because when police officers ask to come inside, it's not really a question. It's the moment before everything changes. I stepped aside, of course. They came in, boots heavy on my floor, and stood in my living room like they were sizing up a crime scene. My hands started shaking. I shoved them in my pockets, tried to keep my voice steady. "What's this about?" The taller officer pulled out a notepad. "We received a complaint from your HOA president, Linda Harmon. She says you've made verbal threats toward board members, that you've been acting aggressive at meetings, and that there's been suspicious activity at this address." Threats, aggressive, suspicious. Activity, the words hit like a hammer to the chest. My mouth went dry. My brain scrambled to catch up. None of that was true. Not one word. I'd never threatened anyone. I'd spoken at one meeting, calmly, with a folder of paperwork. And suspicious activity didn't even speed in the neighborhood. "I'm sorry," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "There must be a mistake." The younger officer was still looking around. At my couch, my coffee table, the kitchen behind me. He expected to find evidence of something. You having problems with the HOA? The taller officer asked. Yes, I stammered, but nothing like that. They've been fining me over small things. I've been trying to fix it, but you ever threaten any board members? No, absolutely not. Raise your voice. Get physical. No, I spoke once. Brought documents. I was calm. We needed to take a look around. My stomach dropped. Around? You mean search my house? Just a quick walkthrough. Make sure everything matches up with what was reported. Reported? She hadn't just made one call. She'd built a story. And now 2 armed officers were standing in my living room, treating me like a criminal. I thought about saying no. Thought about asking for a warrant. But then I realized, if I refuse, I look guilty. If I push back, they'll come back with paperwork and more questions. And the whole neighborhood would see. The patrol cars were already out front. People were probably watching right now. Linda was definitely watching. Go ahead, I said quietly. Look wherever you need to. They moved through the house. One checking rooms, the other watching me. I followed a few steps behind, my chest tight. Throat closed up. Every step they took felt like an invasion. Every door they opened felt like a violation. This was my home, the place I'd worked 30 years to afford. And now strangers were treating it like a crime scene. One of them paused at my office desk, looked at the stack of folders. What's this? He asked. Documentation, I said. My voice cracked. Of the fines, the emails. I've been keeping records. He flipped through a few pages, didn't say anything, just nodded and kept going. 15 minutes. That's how long they were inside. Felt like hours. When they finally came back to the living room, I stood there, arms wrapped around myself, trying not to fall apart. Didn't find anything, the taller officer said. I need to ask you straight. Have you threatened Linda Harmon or anyone else? On that board? No, I said. I swear. Never. Any illegal activity here? No. He studied me for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. Just slightly, all right, he said. We'll file a report. If we get more complaints, we'll be back. More complaints. That meant Linda could do this again. Time she wanted. Can I ask? I said, voice shaking now. What exactly did she say I did? The younger officer checked his notebook. Says you've been hostile at meetings. Made comments about taking action against the board, and neighbors reported suspicious activity. Suspicious activity. At my house, where I drink coffee, watch old westerns, and go to bed at 9:30. That's not true, I said. None of it. The taller officer's expression softened. Just a little. Look, we have to follow up on everything we get. But between you and me, this looks like a civil dispute. You're having trouble with your HOA, you might want to get a lawyer involved. A lawyer? With what money? The money I'd already blown on bogus fines? They headed for the door. I followed, numb, my brain still trying to process what had just happened. As they stepped onto the porch, the taller officer paused and looked back. For what it's worth, he said, voice low, we get HOA calls more than you'd think. Someone with a little power who doesn't know when to quit. Then they were gone, down the steps, into their cars. Engines started. Within 2 minutes, the patrol cars pulled away, leaving me standing in my doorway, staring at the empty street. Across. The way Linda's curtains moved, I closed the door and leaned against it. My legs felt weak. My whole body was shaking. But not from fear anymore. From rage. She'd called the police on me. Lied to them. It's made me sound dangerous, unstable, criminal. She'd sent armed officers to my home, knowing full well I'd done nothing wrong. She'd done it to humiliate me, to terrify me. To remind me that she could. The house felt different now, quieter, colder, like it had been violated and would never quite feel the same. But something else was happening too. That fear that had lived in my chest for weeks, the one that made me second-guess every step outside, every piece of mail. Every noise, it was gone, and in its place was something harder, sharper. I walked to my office and sat at my desk, opened my laptop, pulled up the HOA bylaws again. This time I wasn't looking for rules about gardens or flags. I was looking for rules about the board, about how money gets spent, about meeting minutes, about who has access to what. What happens when someone in power crosses the line? And that's when I saw it, a small section buried in the financial policies. Board members were required to disclose any business relationships with HOA vendors, required to document expenses over a certain amount, required to make financial records available to homeowners upon request. I grabbed my folder, started going through old statements, and I noticed something I'd missed before. The HOA had hired a new landscaping company 6 months ago, right after Linda took over, and the monthly fees had nearly doubled. No explanation, no vote that I'd seen in any meeting minutes. I opened a new document and started typing names, dates, amounts, inconsistencies. Because Linda had just made her biggest mistake. She'd used the police as a weapon over a lie. And now I was going to dig into every corner of that HOA budget until I found out what she'd been hiding behind all those policies and power plays. And when I found it, and I would find it, ICE wasn't going to send an email or show up at a meeting. With a folder, I was going to make sure every homeowner in this neighborhood saw exactly who they'd put in charge. Anger is a strange thing. Sometimes it burns hot and fast, makes you do something stupid you'll regret later. But other times, it burns cold and slow, sharpens you, makes you focused. That's the kind of anger I felt sitting at my desk after the police left, Linda thought. She'd broken me. She thought sending cops to my door would be the final blow. I'd pack up, pay up, or give up. But what she didn't realize was that she'd just given me something I didn't have before. Motivation. I opened my laptop and pulled up the HOA bylaws, all 100+ pages. This time I wasn't skimming, I was hunting. And within an hour, I found the first crack in Linda's armor. The bylaws said the HOA president had to be elected by a majority vote of homeowners at a meeting with proper quorum. 20% of residents had to be present or represented by proxy. I pulled up the meeting minutes from Linda's election. They were buried 3 layers deep on the website, like someone hoped no one would look. 11 people had attended. 11 out of over 100 homes. My hand stopped on the keyboard. I read it again to make sure I wasn't imagining it. 20. A percent of 100 homes was 20 people. Linda's election had 11. She wasn't legally the president. I felt something shift in my chest. Not relief, not yet, but something close. Like a door I didn't know existed had just cracked open. If her election wasn't valid, then nothing she'd done was either. Not the fines, not the violations, not the call to the police. But I didn't stop there, because people who cut corners once usually do it again. I pulled up the HOA financial reports. They were supposed to be public, posted quarterly. I found them under a password-protected folder, but the protection was broken, sloppy. I opened the last 2 years and started comparing. Numbers. At first, everything looked normal. Then I saw it. The maintenance and repairs line had nearly doubled in the past year. $15,000 for landscaping, signage, and renovations. I looked out my window at the neighborhood. Same old signs, same flower beds, nothing renovated. $15,000 gone. My stomach tightened. I pulled up public property records and searched Linda's address. There it was, a permit for a custom deck. $6,000. A shed. $1,200. Exterior renovations. $7,000. Filed within the same months the HOA money disappeared, $14,200. Almost exact. I sat back, hands shaking, not from fear, from rage. She'd been stealing from us, from Mary on a fixed income, from Tom paying bogus fines, from me bled dry over a garden and a flag. And she'd used that money to build a deck while threatening to take my house. I printed everything. Bylaws, meeting minutes, financial reports, permits, organized it all in a folder, clean and clear, undeniable. Then I picked up the phone. Tom answered on the second ring. I told him what I'd found. He went quiet for a long time. Then I knew something wasn't right. We're going to fix it, I said. But I need your help. I called Mary next. She cried when I told her, but this time it was different. Relief mixed. With anger? Can we stop her? She asked, her voice shaking. But we need numbers. Over the next 2 days, I reached out carefully. Okay, a quiet call here. A short conversation at the grocery store there. I didn't send group emails or post anything online. Linda had eyes everywhere, but I found people. People who'd been fined, humiliated, ignored. People who were tired of being afraid in their own neighborhood. On the third evening, I asked them to meet me at the park. 7:30 after dark, away from streetlights and prying eyes. 12 people showed up. We stood in a loose circle. Near the playground, voices low, and I showed them what I'd found. Tom held the folder with the financial reports, hands trembling as he read. Mary covered her mouth when she saw the permits. Janet, who'd been fined for the wrong shade of white paint, just stared at the numbers and whispered, "She stole from us." An older man named Frank, who'd lived here since the neighborhood was built, looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I thought I was going crazy," he said. "I thought maybe I was just too old to understand the rules anymore." "You're not crazy," I said. "She's a thief. We're going to prove it." "How?" Tom asked. "We call an emergency meeting. The bylaws let any homeowner request one if they get 10% of residents to sign. We've got 12 people here. We only need 10 signatures." Janet frowned. "What if she shuts us down?" "She's done it before. She can't. Not if we follow the rules exactly. And if she tries, that just proves what we already know." Mary stepped forward, her voice stronger now. "What do you need?" "Signatures. Tonight. Then we hand-deliver the request tomorrow morning before she knows what's happening." One by one, they signed 13 names on a single sheet of paper. When the last person finished, I folded it carefully and put it in my jacket pocket. It felt heavier than it should have, like it was carrying all of us. We delivered the request the next morning. Certified mail to every board member. Hand-delivered to the HOA office with a time stamp and a witness. Linda had 14 days to hold the meeting. It was the law. She tried to call me that afternoon. I didn't answer. She sent an email. I didn't reply. She didn't get to control the conversation anymore. Over the next 2 weeks, I prepared. I made copies of everything, put together a presentation. Simple, clear, no emotions, just facts and proof. Tom helped me rehearse. Mary organized a phone tree so everyone knew when and where to show up. Janet made sure we had enough people committed to attend, that we'd have a real quorum this time, not 11 people on a Tuesday afternoon. A room full of homeowners who were done being pushed around. The night before the meeting, I sat at my kitchen table, the folder open in front of me. I thought about the moment the police had walked through my house, the way I'd felt like a criminal in my own home, the way Linda had watched from across the street. She'd wanted me to feel small, powerless, afraid. She'd miscalculated. The meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. in the community center. I got there at 6:30. The room was already filling up. Not just the 12 of us. Others had heard. Word spreads fast in neighborhoods like this, especially when someone's been caught doing something they shouldn't by 7. There were 40 people in the room. 40. More than had attended an HOA meeting in years. Linda sat at the front. Table with the board members, her face tight, her smile forced. She kept shuffling papers, avoiding eye contact. I sat in the third row, folder on my lap, hands steady. When the meeting started, she tried to rush through the agenda. Pool maintenance, landscaping schedules, routine approvals. It's like if she moved fast enough, we'd forget why we were really there. But when she tried to close the meeting early, I stood up. My legs were solid. My voice was steady. "I have emotion," I said. Her eyes snapped to me. "This isn't the time for according to the bylaws. Any homeowner can make a motion during an open meeting. I'm making one now." The room went silent. "I move that we conduct an immediate vote of no confidence in the current board president, Linda Harmon, on the grounds of financial mismanagement, abuse of authority, and electoral fraud." Someone gasped. Linda's face went white. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. "You can't," she finally stammered, voice cracking. "I have evidence," I said. "And I'd like to present it now." I walked to the front of the room, opened my folder, began. And for the first time in months, I wasn't the one being watched. The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. 40 sets of eyes on me as I stood at the front. Folder open, evidence laid out like cards in a winning hand. Linda sat frozen, knuckles white, gripping the table's edge. I didn't rush. Didn't need to. This, I said, holding up the meeting minutes, shows Linda's election had 11 people present. The bylaws require 20. Her election was never valid. Murmurs rippled through the room. Linda's mouth opened, but no sound came. I picked up the financial reports. These show $15,000 spent on landscaping, signage, and renovations. I've lived here the whole time. Can anyone tell me what got renovated? Silence. People looked at each other, confused. Not a thing. Because the money didn't. Go to the neighborhood. I held up the property permits. It went here. Linda's house. Custom deck shed. Exterior work. $14,200. Same months, the HOA money vanished. Someone in the back said, "Wait, she stole from us?" Yes. The room erupted. Not loud, but sharp. Angry whispers, shocked faces. Linda tried to stand, but George, the board member next to her, put his hand up.
I sit.
Down, Linda. She sat. 5 days ago, I continued, my voice cutting through the noise. 2 cops showed up at my door. Linda told them I'd made threats, that I was dangerous, that there was illegal activity at my house. Dead silence now. Day. Searched everything. My closets. My desk. Treated me like a criminal.
Out.
She told code enforcement I was hoarding. They came with cameras. I've never been so humiliated. Tom stood next, she said. My work truck was illegal. Threatened to have it towed. I've parked that truck here for 8 years. Then Janet, then Frank, then more. One by one, people rose with their stories. Fines for bird feeders, for moss on a roof, the wrong shade of white paint. The room wasn't quiet anymore. It was angry. Linda tried to speak. I was just what? George's voice was loud now, sharp. He leaned toward her, face red. You lied to the police? Over a garden? He wouldn't listen? Had to protect the community? You were protecting yourself. My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed steady. You were covering up fraud. And when I asked questions, you tried to bury me. Linda stood, grabbed her purse. I don't have to stay here. Tom stepped in front of the door, didn't touch her, just stood there. Linda's answers, he said. Linda looked around. 40 faces. No friends, no escape. Her shoulders sagged. She dropped back into her chair and put her face in her hands. I needed the money, she said, voice cracking. The dues weren't enough, and my husband lost his job, and I thought, she stopped breath, hitching. I thought I could pay it back before anyone noticed. Her hands were trembling now, tears running down her face. But the room stayed silent, cold. Didn't mean for it to get this bad, she whispered. I just... Just wanted people to follow. The rules, and then everything got out of control, and I couldn't stop. You called the cops on innocent people, George said, his voice quiet now, but harder than steel. You terrorized this neighborhood for months. You stole from people who trusted you. Linda didn't respond. She just sat there with her face in her hands, crying. I'm calling a vote, I said. No confidence in Linda Harmon, and a full financial audit. All in favor? Every hand in the room went up, including George. Opposed? Silence. You're done, George said flatly. We're reporting this to the county. You need to leave. This time when Linda stood, no one stopped her. She walked out, purse clutched to her. Chest, tears still streaming, and the door clicked shut behind her. For 3 seconds, the room held its breath. Then someone in the back started clapping, slowly, then faster. Then the whole room exploded. People hugging, crying, shaking hands. Mary grabbed me and squeezed so hard I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight and light at the same time. My hands were still shaking, but now from relief instead of anger. My legs felt weak. Sat down hard in the nearest chair. Frank gripped my shoulder, eyes wet. Thank you, he whispered. I just nodded. Didn't trust my voice yet. The county moved fast once we filed the complaint. Linda's permits, the financials, the invalid election it all checked out. She hired a lawyer, but there was no defense. She agreed to pay back every stolen dollar plus penalties. Her house went up for sale 2 weeks later. Saw the sign go up from my porch. George stepped in as interim president and called for new elections. Real ones. Saturday morning, at T5, people showed up. Diane, a retired teacher, won. Easily. Her first move? Reverse every fine from the past year and issue refunds. 3 weeks later, a check came in the mail. $875. Every fine I'd paid returned. I stood at the mailbox, holding that check. Something in my chest finally loosened all the way. I planted new flowers that weekend. Felt good to get my hands in the soil again. Added stones to the border. Put my solar light back. My flag stayed right where it was. A few days later, I was watering the garden when a patrol car rolled by. The same officer from before. He slowed, looked at me, raised his hand in a small wave. I waved back. He nodded and drove on. No suspicion, no tension. Just neighbors, Mary. Put her gnome back out. Tom parked his truck without thinking twice. Frank pressure washed his driveway. The neighborhood breathed again. One evening, Diane stopped by while I was on the porch. Got a minute, she asked. Sure. She sat on the steps next to me. I wanted to thank you. A lot of people were too scared to stand up, but you did. It changed. Everything. I just had enough, I said. No. You were patient. You were smart. And you didn't let her turn you into something you weren't. After she left, I stayed outside a while longer. Cool air. Quiet street. And for the first time in months, my home felt like mine again. Here's the thing about bullies. They count on you staying quiet. They hide behind rules and titles, hoping you'll think they're untouchable. But they're not. When someone tries to scare you in your own home, the strongest thing you can do is stand your ground. Not with anger or threats. Patience, proof, and calm. Because the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to show up.